Hi, everyone. So I recently published the second installment of my fantasy series, The Crown and the Cage God, Book One, Part One. This is Book One, Part Two. This is the one that just came out, and a couple of weeks before it did, a couple of weeks ago, I caught a black widow in a mason jar. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of shriveled up. Now, when I first caught it, it was like huge and elegant looking. I mean, it had that perfect blood colored hourglass on her belly. So, of course, I snatched her up like a little spider type Pokemon. And then I would show people or even just tell people about the jar. And everyone thought I was crazy. Are you nuts? People would ask me. And the same people who thought I was crazy about this were cavalier about COVID. And now, for the sake of perspective, I teach epidemiology and I teach physiology. These are my two core subjects. Having studied them for years and years, having taught them for years and years and years and years, I can't help but see the world through a scientific lens. And a bite from a black widow, even like a big mommy long legs like this one, that has nothing on COVID. I mean, in the US alone, there were over 1 million deaths from COVID. And the last person to die from a bite from one of these was over 40 years ago. I was a baby at the time. And this is basically a bee sting. And yet, people just thought I was crazy for capturing this in like a glass Pokeball. And that reaction baffles me because pretending that this is somehow more dangerous than grocery shopping in Stockton in 2020 is pure fantasy. And that brings us to the present topic, which is a lot of these emotions that we incorporate in fantasy literature, things like fear and revulsion. There are these evolutionary inclinations that are hardwired into, I mean, especially with revulsion. Fear, we're capable of updating our software, of expressing panic over screeching tires and severed power lines. But with revulsion, this tends to be a lot more ancestral. And these ancestral biases work their way into our fantasy literature. So, like, everybody finds snakes and spiders grotesque. And thus, we get Aragog, we get Shelob. And as much as I love Lord of the Rings, I adore Harry Potter, I find this particular part of fantasy literature to be an unspeakable bore, because what bigger cliche is there than taking real life fantasies, scribbling them on the page, and calling that fantasy literature? And I feel like maybe characters get handled similarly. Certainly magic systems get handled similarly. Sometimes the lens, right, the perspective that writers bring to the genre just feels as stale and shriveled up as my little baby Shelob Pokemon here. But I hope all of your fears and revulsions, old world and new, leave you alone for the time being. And wherever links live, you can find the links to my books. But that's all. I'll see you next time.